Dr. Mengele was like drunk with the possibilities that were granted to him to find the guinea pigs.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're discussing 10 evil scientists who experimented on humans.
But you thought you were really shocking him.
When he wasn't making noise anymore, that's when I was worried. I didn't want to go on with it.
For this list, we'll be looking at medical professionals known for their controversial studies on the human mind and body. Which human experiment shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. Sidney Gottlieb. Believing that the Soviet Union was practicing mind control, the Central Intelligence Agency sought to conduct experiments of their own.
I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD.
In 1953, they funded chemist Sidney Gottlieb's Project MK-Ultra, hoping to discover a truth serum to use in interrogations. Left unsupervised, Gottlieb administered illegal drugs, most notably LSD, to his human test subjects, many of them unaware they were participants in a covert experiment. Additionally, he employed other methods such as hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and electroshocks.
He also was put in an insulin coma for 36 days with a recording beside him saying that your mother hates you over and over and over and over and over.
After 20 years of psychologically torturing subjects, Gottlieb concluded that mind control was impossible and destroyed evidence of his work. While it's unknown how many deaths occurred as a result of Gottlieb's experiments, the devastating lasting effects have since been made public by survivors.
I remember them telling me that I was getting smaller and smaller, and I really felt myself getting smaller.
John B. Watson. Following in the footsteps of Russian scientist Ivan Pavlov, psychologist John B. Watson and his assistant Rosalie Rayner attempted to apply classical conditioning in humans. Their incredibly unethical 1920 study became known as the Little Albert experiment. Their test subject was a 9-month-old whom they called Albert. Watson and Rayner presented him with a rat, which he had no reaction to at first. Then they did it again while creating a loud sound. Albert eventually associated the rat with scary sounds and would cry when he saw any furry animal, including rabbits, dogs, and even a Santa Claus beard. Before they could reverse the conditioning, the child's mother reportedly pulled him from the study, with Albert likely psychologically traumatized with a lifelong fear of animals. Wendell Johnson. In 1939, psychologist and speech pathologist Wendell Johnson and a graduate student, Mary Tudor, set out to test the theory that stuttering was a learned behavior that could be unlearned. Johnson selected 22 children, a mix of stutterers and normal speakers, from an orphanage in Iowa. The subjects were split into groups, with some receiving praise for their positive speech, while others were ridiculed for their flawed speech.
I've located a word which helps me control my stuttering.
The monster study, as it came to be known, was essentially gaslighting children without stutters into believing that they did have stutters and vice versa. After months of experiments, results showed none of the non-stuttering children became stutterers. However, some did develop trouble with their speech, which made them self-conscious, withdrawn, and anxious about speaking.
Oh yeah, great job on that one.
Researchers at Vanderbilt University. In the 1940s, more than 800 pregnant women came to Vanderbilt University's clinic in Tennessee seeking free health care. Instead, they became unwitting test subjects in a radiation experiment. The purpose of the 4-year study was to test the length of time it would take for the placenta to absorb iron. Researchers gave the women pills or drinks containing radioactive iron with roughly the same amount of radiation as an X-ray. At the time, being exposed to radiation 30 times higher than average was considered safe. But in the 1990s, it was discovered that at least 3 children died after developing terminal illness directly caused by the exposure. Stanley Milgram.
Something's happening to that man in there. Can you please go check that everything's okay?
Following the atrocities committed during the Holocaust, social psychologist and Yale University professor Stanley Milgram studied the psychology of genocide. He conducted his obedience to authority experiment in 1961, testing how far a person would go if an authority figure told them to seriously harm someone.
We're really interested in studying your reaction to having to inflict pain on someone you don't know. The experiment's about obeying orders.
Volunteers for the study believed they were participating in a study about learning and memory. As teachers, they were instructed to administer electrical shocks to learners for every incorrect answer.
Incorrect. 150 volts wet duct.
However, participants didn't know the learners were actors and the shocks weren't real. Milgram's results showed 65% of teachers continued to shock the learner all the way to the highest level of 450 volts, though they were uneasy about it.
Oh, I was worried sick. I thought I was,
You're a good fella. No hard feelings. No hard feelings.
Many were distressed and allegedly not given a proper debriefing. Albert Kligman.
They have lots of fears and regrets. They never really learned what they were testing or being injected with.
Beginning in the mid-1960s, University of Pennsylvania dermatologist Dr. Albert Kligman conducted dermatological research on over 70 inmates at Philadelphia's Holmesburg Prison. In an experiment funded by the Dow Chemical Company, Johnson & Johnson, and others, Kligman set out to test the effects of dioxin on the human body.
In some cases, it could just be very plain soap. In other cases, it could be a carcinogenic chemical. The inmates were never told.
He injected prisoners, who were mostly minorities, with the contaminant, resulting in the development of severe chloracne all over their bodies, as well as blisters and lesions. Speaking about the inmates, Kligman told an interviewer, quote, "All I saw before me was acres of skin."
He thought what took place here was fine. According to his observation, the inmates were treated fairly.
Philadelphia shut down the experiments in 1974.
Aubrey Levin. Among the many atrocities committed during the apartheid era in South Africa was the Aversion Project, led by South African Defense Force Colonel and psychiatrist Aubrey Levin. He earned the nickname Dr. Shock from his belief and practice that electric shock treatment could cure homosexuality, which was considered deviant behavior. Since the government believed same-sex attraction was a disease, homosexual military personnel were put through aversion therapy. Dr. Levin administered several methods of quote-unquote therapy, most notably electric shocks and chemical castration. Those deemed incurable underwent forced gender reassignment surgery and given new identities. The psychiatrist went on to practice in Canada for decades until his license was revoked in 2010 for allegedly assaulting multiple male patients. Shiro Ishii. During the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II, Surgeon General Shiro Ishii of the Imperial Japanese Army directed a secret chemical and biological warfare facility. Under his direction, researchers at Unit 731 committed unspeakable acts on humans, including prisoners of war, alleged spies, and civilian men, women, and children. The horrific experiments, which included vivisection, amputation, and bioweapons testing, were often performed while the victims were awake and without anesthetic. By the end of the war, evidence of their experiments and the compound were destroyed, and thousands of victims were killed. In 1946, Shiro Ishii received war crime immunity for disclosing the unit's activities. Researchers and physicians of the Tuskegee syphilis study.
If you got bad blood, you get treated for free. Now ain't that something? I'm asking you, ain't that something for government to be doing? And for the college? We got us a whole new deal here.
In 1932, the United States Public Health Service and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention launched a study to test the effects of syphilis when left untreated. The study was conducted in Mason County, Alabama, where 600 economically disadvantaged African-American male sharecroppers were recruited to participate in exchange for free health care. However, the men were kept in the dark about the true nature of the experiment. 399 of the men had syphilis, and the 201 men without the disease became a control group. Originally intended to last 6 months, the study went on for 40 years, with over 100 subjects dying. After it was made public in 1972, the study was shut down.
They paying us for having the bad blood.
They showing appreciation for what your boy's done.
I ain't done nothing, Miss Ellis, except get sick.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Josef Mengele. In 1943, German SS officer and doctor Josef Mengele became the chief physician at Auschwitz concentration camp. There, he carried out horrific experiments on children, particularly identical twins.
He may have chosen to go to Auschwitz because he felt there he could do the freest amount of experimentation with the most limited constraints.
While his young subjects were housed separately and given better food, Mengele wasn't concerned about their actual health. He was only interested in whether they were suitable for his experimentation. Some were intentionally infected with diseases and/or subjected to completely unnecessary operations, just to satisfy the Nazi doctor's anthropological curiosity. An unknown but presumably high number of victims died during the experiments or were killed after they were of no use to Mengele. However, some survived the traumatizing experience and went on to tell their stories.
He wanted to play God. He wanted to find, by trial and error, how to create blue-eyed blondes, males or females in multiple numbers.